So in this tutorial we're going to look at context within React and also the context API and how you can use it to actually share data between lots of different components, especially ones that have been nested quite deeply, without having to pass that data through the various props of those components. So let's dive into the code and see what we're going to be building using the context API within React.
Okay, so let's take a quick look at what we're actually going to be building. So we've got this really simple landing page here, which is a React app. And as you can see, we've got some text, we've got a hero section up here with an image, and we've got a header section at the top, which has the app's title, and it also indicates whether we're in light or dark mode. So just over here on the right hand side, there's a toggle switch, and if we click that switch there, you can see the app changes to dark mode. And we can see that because the state of the app is now telling us in the header, but also obviously the colours of the background for the hero and the header have changed too. So this is being done using the context API to actually share the state of the app, whether it's in dark or light mode, throughout the components that we've created in the overall React app. And while I was putting this together, I was kind of feeling that this wasn't the best way to implement dark or light mode on a particular app or site. But the whole point of this tutorial really is to understand the context API and how you can use it to share data or state between parts of your app and your different components. Okay, so we're going to start by creating the components for the app and putting it together, and we'll put some basic styling in there, but the actual main theme of the app, whether it's in dark or light mode, will be controlled by the context API. So once we've got the components together, we'll take a look at how we can wrap them in the context API, and then we'll control the actual theme with this toggle button up here. So if you want to follow along, you can clone the repository from GitHub. There'll be a link in the description below, and if you just navigate to the setup branch, that should reset the app to a basic Create React app with a few basic styles and a few bits of setup ready for us to go. Okay, so I said we'll create the components first of all. So in our source folder, I'm just going to create a new folder called Components, and I'm going to create 3 components for the app. The first one's going to be the header, which had the app title and also the toggle switch as well. And then we're going to have a hero section here, which was the main section that had the title, strapline and image as well. And inside that hero component there's going to be another component which was just the strapline, which was just the bit of text below the actual title. And normally you probably wouldn't put that in its own individual component, but the idea here is that we're going to have some nested components that are all wrapped in the context API, and therefore you don't need to pass props down to them to let them know what theme is currently being used. Okay, so let's start off by creating the header component. So let's create a function here that's just going to export a bit of JSX. And the only thing I'm going to export is a header HTML element. And in there we're going to have the title of my app. And we will be putting the button to actually toggle between the different themes in there in a moment as well. But for the moment that will do for our header component. Just make sure we actually export this. Let's next go and create the strapline component. So same sort of thing again, let's create a function. And all that's returning really is just a p tag, and we can say something along the lines of enjoy our premium coffee, one of our relaxing city locations. The text doesn't matter obviously too much, but if you're following along you can put your own text and strapline in there. And let's export that too, so export default strapline is the component name. And then so when we go over to our hero component, let's create another function here. We'll return a main tag here, and inside that we'll have a div which has got a heading level 1 tag saying we make great coffee. And what we can do now as well, because the text in the strapline appears directly below that, we can just import it and stick it just below that h1 tag. And also we had an image in there as well. And in the public folder of the repository, there's this bar image. It's just a vector graphic from Pixabay, I believe it was. So I'll put a link to that in the description below, but it will be in the repository as well. And we can just reference that by saying bar.png and just say coffee bar. And that's all we pretty much want in our hero component folder at the moment. So let's export a default hero. And what we can do now is actually in the main app.tsx file, is remove what we've got here for the moment. So we'll replace that with a div, and we're going to show first of all the header component, and then the hero component, and let's just import those. Oh, whoops, just got an extra closing tag on there. Okay, so now we've got our components displaying on the page. So this is the header up here. We've got our hero component, which comprises of the H1, the image, and also that strapline component too. So before we go any further, let's actually just add some basic styles to that. So this won't be part of the dark and light theme. This is just more layout, which is obviously not really relevant to whether we're in dark or light mode. So let's target both the header and main tags that we've got, and we'll set the font size to 2 rem inside there, and set the font weight to 700, set the padding to 2 rem, and we're going to display both those components as flex, and justify the content space between. So this will be important for the header when we've got the switch to toggle between themes. That will be over here on the finished app, and in the header component we'll make sure those items are aligned centrally, so the vertical alignment is centered. And for the H1 we'll make the font weight slightly bolder, just remove any margin from that, and the font size is a bit bigger, so 6 rem. And then finally in the actual hero main element, let's say align items is flex start. So instead of the vertical align being central, they'll actually go to the top of the row that they're in. And also that image is rather large as well, so let's just reduce the width of that to about 40%. Okay, so that's some basic layout for the app. What we can start working on now is actually creating the context for the app and then applying it to the various different components by wrapping it in a context provider. Okay, so in our app.tsx file, first thing I'm going to do is create some state for this. So we'll say the theme and set theme is equal to a use state hook, which has just got a default of string of light. And this state will hold whether we're in light or dark mode. And what we would normally do if we weren't using the context API is we would take this value it's stored in theme and pass it into the header component, and that would let the header component know whether it was in light or dark mode. And then the same thing for the hero component, we would pass that into that component as a prop. But the problem comes with the nested components that are inside it. So you remember we created this strapline component. So we would then need to pass the theme state down into this strapline component as another prop. And you can imagine if you had components nested several levels deep, then this is going to get a bit cumbersome, and that's where the context API comes in, because we can actually get to the context inside of these components directly and set their theme accordingly. Okay, so we've got this state within the app component. Let's actually create our context. So I'm going to export this so it can be imported elsewhere as well. So we've got export const, and we'll say it's a theme context. Doesn't matter of the name, you can call it whatever you like, but theme seems to be sensible here. And then we're going to call the React create context function. And normally that would be enough to actually just create a context. The only thing is we're using TypeScript here, and it does expect an argument, so we could just pass in an empty object, but we'll run into some other typing problems if we just leave it as an empty object there, because TypeScript won't know what type of properties are on there. So we can just create a simple interface here, and we'll just say it's theme context is the interface, and basically we're just going to be passing the theme and set theme into the context. So theme will obviously be a string, and set theme will actually be the result of this function here, which is a little bit long-winded, so we could copy that, but just for ease of use here I'm just going to say it's any, and then this object that we pass in here is of type iThemeContext. Okay, so that TypeScript error has gone, and we won't get tripped up later down the line because it's been typed to this iThemeContext. And with the context created, we want to actually wrap the components that are going to be using the context in a provider. So what we do here, instead of having the div as the outermost element, we say theme context that we've just created. We want to get the provider, and then we set the value equal to an object, which is basically going to be the theme state, and also the set theme setter for that state as well. So let's just close that off there, and the closing tag we'll just need to go at the end of where we want that provider to finish. Okay, so our header, hero, and any nested components are now wrapped in this theme context provider. So to access it, we can actually use a hook within those components called useContext to actually get the value of theme inside it. So inside of the header component, for example, what we can do is before we actually start rendering any JSX, we can get to the theme value that's stored in the context by using the useContext hook, and then just passing it in the theme context that we created and exported in the app.tsx file. So this will literally hold the value of light or dark. So just to show you that, we can actually put it into the header component itself. And as you can see now, we've got the value of light, which is being passed in from the context provider in the value that's stored in theme. Okay, so at the moment the value of theme is static. We need some way to change it. So we're going to be using that toggle switch to actually toggle between the light and dark modes. So we're going to need another component for that. And we'll call this one theme toggle. So let's create the component, theme toggle. And it's just going to return a div at the moment. And let's export that from the file. And you can use any type of checkbox or toggle that you would like. What I've actually done for this project is I've installed a package called React Switch, which is just a simple package which will allow you to create one of those slide toggles. And it's already set up to integrate into React applications, so it's really handy. So let's implement that here. So the component that library provides you is just called Switch. And it looks like I'm just going to need to import that myself. So import switch from React Switch. Okay, and we don't need to have the two tags there. We can just have a self-closing tag here. Okay, so it does need a few bits of information in here. We do need to have an onChange event. So when the actual toggle is changed. Let's just create a function for that. And the other thing we need to say is whether it's checked or not, and we'll just say true for the moment. And let's just go and add that into the header component, because that's where it lived in the original app that we had. So let's just put theme toggle into here. Let's save the app, and now you can see that toggle is there at the moment. Okay, so a couple of things to do with that. First of all, we need to implement this handle theme toggle event in just a moment, but I don't really want to show the tick boxes in there at the moment. You can actually customize what's displayed in there, but for the purposes of the tutorial, I'm just going to set the icon for that to false, and the same thing for the checked. So both checked and unchecked states won't show any icons in there, so that's looking a bit better. And maybe the on color, we don't really want the green as well, so we'll just pass it in a sort of light grey color. Okay, so to handle the toggle event, we first need to get the context that we're working in. So same as we did in the actual header component, I'm going to just get the context from the provider that we're currently using. So don't forget we need to use the useContext hook and then pass that in the theme context that we created in the app file. And that will basically give us access to the state of the current theme in this string, and we've also got access to the setter as well. So then all we need to do in our handle toggle function here is we're just going to directly update that theme state, and if the existing string that's stored in theme is equal to light, then we need to flip it to dark. But if not, we can set it to light. Okay, so when the toggle switch changes now, this function should run, and the theme state that's been provided by the context will be updated accordingly. So let's give that a go. We should be able to see the theme that's been output in the header component updating, and if we flip between the two, we can see it's flipping between light and dark. And there is a bit of a problem there because the toggle's not actually updating. That's because I've always set the checked to true. But now we've got theme imported, we can set the value of checked to true if the value of that is set as light. So now when it is light, we should be able to switch between the two states. Okay, so the toggle button is working as you would expect it to work now. Okay, so we've set up a context for our app and we've wrapped pretty much everything that we've got in our app in this context. And we've got this toggle button now, which we can actually flip between the theme values that are stored in our context. The only thing really now is we need to change the colors of the app depending on whether we're in light or dark mode. So as I said at the start of this tutorial, there are a million different ways to do this, and there's probably better ways to do it than I'm going to show you now. But what I will show you is how you can access the context that you're in within each of your components and style them accordingly. So let's start off just by creating an interface, and we'll call that app theme. Okay, and this is just a TypeScript interface to make things a little bit more secure for us in terms of when we're actually setting up our theme. So in our theme, it can either be a dark theme, and I'm just going to apply a list of CSS properties to that, or it could also be a light theme, but there might be also some themes that we want to apply which are common to both. And I guess these could also be directly put into the CSS themselves, but I'm just going to put that in as an optional property of our interface there, just in case we want to provide anything in our styles object. Because what we're going to be doing in each of these components is creating a styles object that matches this interface, and then applying those to the actual component depending on whether we're in the dark or light mode. Okay, so let's go back to the header component and start there. So once we've got our theme, we know we're in light or dark mode there. I'm just going to create a object here which will basically map to the app theme interface, and I need to match those properties. So we've got dark mode to start off with. So when we're in dark mode, what do we want to do? We want to basically set the background color to be black and also the text color to be white, and that should do for our example. And for the light mode, when we're in that, let's set the background color to be a sort of lightish grey. Okay, and the colour of the text, we'll just set that to black. Okay, and what I'll also do here is provide that common CSS properties as well. So we'll have a transition. We'll just transition everything in the component for 1 second. And that will just give a bit of a fade effect when we're swapping between the two styles. Okay, so we've got this object defined. We need to apply those styles to the header component and the contents inside it, depending on what theme we're in. So to do that, I'm just going to generate a theme style object, and this is kind of a bit unnecessary, but I'm doing this because I want to first of all get the header style .common properties that we created in there. And the other things that we want to do as well is to, if the theme is light, so the state that's been passed in from the context is light, we'll get the header style.light or the header style.dark, and we'll just spread those properties into this theme style object. So we don't need to actually put any of that logic within the JSX. So once we've got the actual theme style object itself, let's just pass it to the style prop of our header. And you can see once that's applied, depending on what mode we're in, the header background and text will change accordingly. Okay, so that seems to be working fine. So what we've done is basically created a theme object and then basically applied the correct theme depending on what state is set in the context. And we could extend this object to do other things if we needed to as well, but background, color and text is a good start for dark and light mode. Okay, so in the hero.tsx file, let's do the same thing. Let's first of all get the context or the theme from our context. So use context and theme context. And then let's create a style object for this component following the app theme interface. So we need a dark property, background color, and we'll just set that to a dark grey. And the color is just white for the text. And then in light mode, we'll have background color is equal to a very light grey, and the color is black. So some common things here to add in. We'll add in the transition again. So all 1 second ease, and also I'm going to set the height here as well to 1400 pixels. This is only really necessary for the tutorial here because I'm actually zoomed out quite a lot in the browser so I can fit everything on the page. And obviously if you're designing your own app, you might put this in your CSS as well. So same thing again, which is going to create a style object that we can just bung into the style of the JSX that we're rendering. So let's just first of all, the hero styles, get that common property. And then also, depending on what the theme is set as, we'll get hero style.light or hero style.dark. And then down in the main tag, let's just pass that into the style property of the main tag. Whoops, looks like I've got a semicolon there instead of a comma. Okay, so now we've got the rest of the app is picking up on the light and dark mode theme colors that we've got applied in there. And the final component we've got is this strapline component. So at the moment it's just following what we're passing in the hero component, but maybe we want to actually put something more specific in for that strapline component in terms of the styles that are being applied. So we can just repeat the process one more time to get the theme context inside of here. So one more time we'll get the theme context, use context for theme context. Let's create the strapline style object here, following the app theme interface. And so dark. The only thing I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to let the background color be handled by the parent component, which is the hero component. So we'll say the color for that, the text color, is just a medium sort of grey color. And we also then need to provide the light alternative as well. So the color for that is going to be just a slightly different grey color. And I will apply a few more styles in here too as well in the common section. So let's put that transition in one last time here as well. And then also I'm going to set the font weight as well. Again, this could all be done with CSS if you wanted to, but let's just put it in here. And we'll set the font size to 1.5 rem. Okay, so let's generate our theme style object to apply to the component. So it's going to be everything in strapline styles.common. And then, depending on what the theme is, if it's light, we want to get the strapline styles.light, but if not, strapline styles.dark. Okay, and it's just this one p tag in here, but let's access its style prop and pass in the theme style object that we just created. Okay, so that is our light and dark mode setup, and switching between the two, each of the components is accessing the context API, and in particular the theme context that we created, and it's working out whether it's in light or dark mode and applying the appropriate styles from the objects that we've created in each of those components. Okay, so hopefully you found that useful in terms of how to actually create a context and then consume it within the actual components that are being used. And although this has been a bit of a complicated way to implement light and dark mode in your app, hopefully you've seen how you can use the context API to get a global state and then do something with the components that want to consume the actual context API. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. Just before you go, don't forget to subscribe to support the channel and so you don't miss out on any future tutorials. And I'll see you next time in the next React app tutorial.